Good evening, and thank you for watching. My name is Hank Stephenson. I'm a reporter at the Arizona Capitol Times, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor for this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections hosts debates so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. Candidates that have the contested general election have been invited to participate in the debate. Candidates that have opted into the Clean Elections Clean Funding Program are required to participate, while traditional candidates are invited and encouraged to attend. Please note, candidates from the House and Senate are participating in the debate tonight. As the moderator, I will try to ensure candidates have the opportunity to engage directly with their respective opponents. The questions that will be asked this evening are coming directly from the voters. Leading up to these debates, Clean Elections conducted outreach to voters across the state, soliciting questions for the candidates. Voters that are watching this debate live, you can submit questions at any time. Do that by emailing debates@kc-a.com, or you can text them to 928-362-1062. Or you can call them in to 480-937-1297. Please specify if your question is for a specific candidate or for all candidates. We screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplication, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. This debate is scheduled for about an hour, so we may not get to all audience questions, but we will do our best. For the candidates, you will have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements and 1 to 2 minutes for your responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between opponents. If you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments, you may do so. I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and our audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may vote informed. All right, our Senate candidates tonight are Representative T.J. Shope, a Republican, and former Senator Barbara McGuire, a Democrat. In the House, voters can choose 2 candidates on their ballot. Joining us tonight are Representative David Cook, a Republican, and Sharon Girard, a Democrat. Senator Frank Pratt, who is attempting to move to the House, declined to join tonight's debate. Let's get to the opening statements, and let's start with you, Representative Shope.
Well, thank you, Hank, for having us tonight, and thank you to the Citizens Clean Elections Commission for putting these on. I wish that we were at our usual spot over in Florence, as we have been for several years, but Zoom will have to do, and YouTube for the folks who are watching in our district. My name is T.J. Shope. I currently serve in the State House of Representatives, and I've served the 8th Legislative District as a state representative for 4 terms. I'm looking to move over to the state Senate this November, and with your help, I'll be able to make that move. It's been an honor to represent you in the State House. We've had plenty of successes, which hopefully we will get into tonight. We've also had some challenges that we've had to face over the last several months and even some years. So we'll also be able to discuss some of those tonight. More than anything, I want to talk about my positive vision for Arizona's 8th Legislative District and the state of Arizona as a whole, because we have a lot of great things happening here in the district, and I want to see them continue to happen. So with that, I look forward to the questions. I look forward to the conversation this evening, and I'm ready to go ahead and allow the voters to make an informed choice come November. And my hope is that that choice is T.J. Shope for State Senate. Thank you.
Representative. And before I introduce Ms. McGuire, I should probably note that she had some connectivity issues, so is joining us by phone today. Ms. McGuire, you're up.
Hi, thank you, Hank, and thank you again to Clean Elections. I echo everything that TJ just said about you being our moderator and Clean Elections providing us this opportunity to have this discussion. These are challenging times. We need tested leaders at the legislature, and that's why I'm running for state senate. I am Barbara McGuire, the daughter of a World War II veteran and a lifelong resident of District 8. I've been married for 49 years. I'm a mother and a grandmother and have a new grandbaby on the way. I've been a small business owner for 24 years, Salvation Army Unit Director for 23 years, and served as Vice President of a Congregation Chamber. I'm a moderate and a consensus builder with a proven track record of working in a bipartisan manner to get things done. I was honored to serve 8 years in the Arizona State Legislature, where I passed life-saving legislation such as allowing teaching of CPR in schools and expanded access to affordable health care. I'm particularly proud to have secured the largest single healthcare grant in our state's history. Both Republican and Democratic governors have signed my legislation into law. I also co-founded the State Mining Caucus and served as Rural Affairs Liaison. I always prioritize my constituents over my party. The conservative Goldwater Institute even named me the most constitutional Democrat. I hope to earn your vote. Please visit barbaramcguireforaz.com to learn more about me. And thank you for tuning in tonight to listen to our debate.
Thank you. And so let's move over to the House candidates. Representative Cook, you're up.
Hey, how you doing, Hank? And thanks for doing this. I'm David Cook. I'm a rancher in Globe. Diana and my children, we ranch up there. And I've been elected twice to the House of Representatives. This is my third election. If I'm successful, it would be my third term, not a fourth, that I'd be eligible for. And since day one that I've been down there, my main focus has been on fixing the problems of the people that I believe that were forgotten. There's a lot of things we've heard so far about moving the state forward. I really want to talk about that. But we also, when you're a representative of the district, I keep focused on making people's lives better in the district. And in general, when you make the people's lives better in your own district, then you're helping the entire state. So I look forward to the debate tonight about the economy. I look forward to talking about the COVID issues and the challenges that we're facing, because I want to also highlight that there's several of us that run our own businesses that at the age of 52 that we can do and focus more, that even though the media seems to focus on COVID all the time, we still are making great leaps and bounds in getting a lot of things done for the people that may go unnoticed. So hopefully we can bring that out to the voters tonight.
Thanks. And Ms. Girard, your opening.
Good evening, and thank you, Clean Elections, for having us here. I'm Sharon Girard, and I'm running to be a strong voice for the people of my district and state. I spent a career in healthcare, practicing medicine in emergency rooms, urgent cares, and clinics that serve the under and uninsured. I've always worked in small communities, living among my patients and running into them in grocery stores. But I saw how my patients struggled to afford the care and the medications that they needed. So after retiring, I decided to run for office. I understand how healthcare works and wants to make that system work better for everyone in Arizona. I volunteered in communities of free clinics, founded Women's Health Conference, served or manned community boards, and national leadership in my professions academy. Now more than ever, we need pragmatic, data-driven voices in the legislature. I'm excited to run to serve as state representative. Thank you.
All right. So let's get to the questions. And I think we'll just stick with that order, starting with Representative Shope, going through the Senate candidates and then the House candidates. The first one is for all of you, starting with you, Rep. Shope. What is the first bill you will introduce if elected?
Well, I think the first bill that, Hank, that I'll be introducing is one that if anybody follows anything that I've been doing over the last handful of years, it's almost a singular focus on expanding Interstate 10 between Phoenix and Casa Grande. We had a bill to expand or actually reconstruct the bridge at the Gila River. I sponsored it. The governor asked me to, pointed it out in the State of the State address this year, and we were able to pass it out of the House. Unfortunately, when COVID struck, a lot of things happened, and we had to pass a continuing budget. But that is issue and priority number one for me, as it has been. And we are very close, and we have an excellent working relationship between ADOT, MAG, the city of Casa Grande, Pinal County, and importantly, the Gila River Indian community and Governor Lewis, who has been working very well to make sure that project gets going. So that is issue and priority number one. It'll be the bill that I drop once again when we get started up in January.
And for you, Ms. McGuire?
Sorry, it's a little delayed because I have to unmute. For me, I think it's going to be addressing the broadband funding in rural Arizona. Our kids need a quality education. Without broadband in rural Arizona, a lot of children are missing out, especially now during COVID. We are 48th now, I believe, nationally in per pupil funding in education. And the broadband funding would help provide education without having to increase education funding too much. But kids are suffering. Their families can't afford internet out here in the rural areas. And with COVID and online learning, some of them are having to be vans shuttled into a library where they can sit down and study. They're practicing social distancing, obviously, because of the COVID issues. But I just think that we can do a lot better with regards to education if we provide broadband in rural Arizona to these kids and families.
All right. Representative Cook, what are you going to do if the voters send you back?
Oh, Hank, man, we're gonna do some heavy lifting. We're gonna have to address some of the budget shortfalls, although I still believe we have a surplus. And what I really want to hear from my seatmate, who I believe does a great job down there, is one thing I think that we should have pointed out: the I-10 stuff that he said he ran for the governor and all that stuff. Some of the work we do down there is the initial bill was somewhere around $50 million. But yet we found out that was less than that, and we are conservative when it comes to doing those infrastructure dollars. And on the broadband funding that I just heard about, there's $10 million, I think, that was just put out there. But what the details of it is, and I'll give you a hint, is that the cable companies, utility companies where Barb lives, they won't invest in putting that broadband underground in those highway structures. So something's going to have to be done with that. What I particularly, the first bill I'm going to do is, as Representative Shope talked about his bridge over there, which I fully support, is that for 17 years, and this is why I love being down there, for 17 years, the north-south corridor has been worked on by the state. We have got to get that thing moving, especially with the sale of the state land that is just south of Gold Canyon over there. There's going to be 1 million, 2 million, 5 people that is going to be living over there someday, and we need to get out ahead of this infrastructure stuff. So the Tier 2 study, the $5 million bill that I introduced there, I think we can find some more cost-sharing funds to do that. And then as the 24 is going to end over on Ironwood, that whole freeway system being tied with a north-south corridor will just help immensely those 150,000 people that are just basically landlocked with no roads in them.
All right. So I have a question written here that says, what actions would you take as a legislator to prepare the state for another pandemic? But I think I'd like to alter that to say, what actions will you take as a lawmaker to prepare for the current pandemic? And let's start off with
I don't want to interrupt you, Hank, but I think Ms. Girard didn't get a chance to answer the last question.
Oh,
so
I'm so sorry, Ms. Girard. You're up. I apologize.
Before we go on, thank you. We have about 750,000 people in our state without health insurance, an ability to pay, and we're in the middle of a health crisis. No one should go bankrupt. No one should go into deep, almost permanent debt. It's $5,000 a day in the ICU, and a lot of people without insurance, and people have lost their jobs and probably lost their insurance. So those numbers went up. So I would work for a way, whether we expand Medicaid in the state to allow a buy-in for people that fall through the cracks. That's what I would do. I would address the health insurance crisis in the state of Arizona and make sure we don't have any uninsured people, especially during these COVID times.
All right. Sorry to skip over you. Won't happen again. So, as I was saying, what are you going to do to prepare the state for this current pandemic, be it another possible wave of the virus or just the ongoing, lingering kind of world that we're living in? That one's to you, Rep. Shope.
Well, I think that what we go ahead and continue many of the steps that we took at the end of session. Mr. Cook and I came together with our colleagues at the House and Senate to ensure that there was emergency funding for Department of Health Services, things like that. We have great work being done by the University of Arizona, Arizona State University. I've taken the saliva test. If you have not, with the surge testing that's available to Arizona residents, I would strongly urge you to do so. It's easy and you get results very quickly. So that is something we have to continue to look at. We have to go ahead and make sure that we're working with our medical professionals out there. It's something that I have a very good track record of doing. It's why the Arizona Nurses Association, the Arizona Medical Association, and the Association of Family Physicians have endorsed my 2020 Senate campaign. I look forward to continuing to work with them on this, and we can do it at the same time of making sure that commerce continues to flourish in the state as well. We have to be smart about it, and we can go ahead and make it work.
I don't know if I got a real answer there, though. What actions are you going to take?
Well, I think as I mentioned, the funding is one thing. You know, we reached into rainy day for a bit of that. Look forward to going ahead and continuing to make sure that our medical professionals do have the funds that they need to tackle this. You know, things like the testing that has been done. We need to make sure that continues to be available. You know, one of the things that I think that we missed out on, especially during the spike early, was that was not ramped up. It has now, and we need to make sure that continues to be the case. We need to make sure that our hospitals continue to have the resources that they need to be able to make people feel comfortable.
All right. And Ms. McGuire, what will you do to prepare the state for the pandemic? And Ms. McGuire, you are muted if you're not aware.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I wanted to touch base on testing. TJ mentioned it. In rural Arizona, I've seen very little testing, especially in the minority areas. And I have seen very little data. And if we don't have testing, we don't know who does or who does not have this virus. And it can spread rapidly without testing and tracking. So we need to improve our testing in rural Arizona areas, and I'd like to see that happen. I would also think it would be beneficial to identify or establish a pandemic coordinator or team, like a committee or a team that has defined roles and has responsibilities for preparedness in a crisis, in a time of crisis. We're gonna have even more people in need this coming this next 2 months, 3 months with the actual regular flu. I feel, first of all, I also want to take a moment to thank the frontline workers that are out there doing their jobs. You know, the mail carriers, the grocery store clerks, the nurses, the doctors. My son is a frontline worker. He works in pharmacy, in a hospital, and I pray every day, every night, you know, that he's protected and safe. And during this pandemic, I've lost 4 friends, good friends, and one of them was like a stepmom to me. So this is no hoax, folks. This is serious business, and it is a crisis in Arizona. Our numbers are starting to go down some, but again, we need testing in place. We need to track those people that are tested. We need to develop a continuity of operation plans for essential agency services. We need to look at what other states are doing. We need to coordinate with possibly military and suppliers of essential PPP equipment that we still need and are using today.
All right. Thank you. Representative Cook.
Hey, thank you, Hank. Repeat the question.
Well, what are you going to do as a lawmaker when you get up there in January, assuming you do, to prepare the state for the pandemic or combat the pandemic?
Well, if we're talking about this pandemic here, I thought your original question would be for the next one or to deal with this one. So
we got to get out of this one first, right?
Well, I think we're on the brink of getting out of this one. But what I want to say is what I've noticed is the tools that we have given the governor's office and the agencies to deal with this, I think that they were adequate. I think there was enough tools in the tool bag as we did that. As the federal CARES dollars came down, I want to say that I was the only one that stood up on the House floor that was asking for those CARE dollars to be released to the rural counties that hadn't been released to the other 13 counties because of the population and the way the feds had set that up. We've got to stay focused on that. But the first thing I'll do when the voters send me back after November is exactly what I've done every time, is meet with the leaders in of the district, the county supervisors and the health professional and the education people, all that, and sit down and say, okay, now here's where we're at, what had worked, what hasn't worked, what do we need to change, and how can we fix it? And that's how, to me, you solve problems. You have to identify the root of the problem or the problem that exists before you can try to find that solution. Now, what I will tell you, being an observer is, living in rural Arizona, is exactly what Ms. McGuire had said is about the testing. These small rural communities and stuff, let's just take Globe, Miami, the county seat of Gila County. So I haven't seen a lot of free testing availability for low or middle income people. I haven't seen the testing drives that I think need to be done. And what I am an optimist says that the numbers, we need to do more testing and test more healthy people so our numbers continue to go down so we can get a real handle on it. Because generally the people that get tested are the ones that are sick. I feel sick, I go to the doctor, I go to the hospital, do that. Now, $300 to do the test at the local hospital when you can drive to Tempe, which many people can't, to get a free test and stand in line. I would like to see some of those resources used to either have a mobile testing center to go out in some of these rural, hard-found communities and have something like that to where more people can get tested out in rural Arizona so we can get the numbers of what those little micro communities are.
All right. Ms. Girard, what are you going to do to combat the virus, the pandemic?
The first thing we have to understand is we may be out of the first wave, but here comes flu season, and then we're going to get more virus. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. I agree with the testing. That is exceptionally important. But we have to look at the other side issues, such as affordable housing and people that are going to be evicted, people that are losing their homes. We're going to have a rash of homeless people in the state. We also have to look at unemployment. That's going to end from the federal government if it hasn't already. And we have the least, almost the worst unemployment amount for people in the country, except Mississippi. People cannot live on $240 a week. People are going to continue to lose their jobs. And the other thing we have to look at is people who are not going to be able to go back to work right away because of post-viral syndrome. We need more family leave, we need more leave, and we need help for these people who have been affected by the virus. And the last thing is we need a pandemic plan from the legislature to address all of this, because as you know, this isn't the last time, but this isn't over yet. So that's some of what I would address.
And Ms. Girard, you hit on my next question. I was going to say Arizona's unemployment is among the lowest in the country. The federal benefits that were offered earlier in the year have been dramatically cut. Well, they've been cut in half and are set to expire shortly. Let me ask you, how much should our state unemployment benefits be?
That's off the top of my head. I don't think I can give you an absolute number. We need to go to economic experts and look at the cost of living. But what we do know is 240 is not going to make it. We're going to have homeless, we're going to have hungry people, and we're going to have a real big economic impact because these people who are normally productive citizens working and putting money back into the economy, when you give them higher unemployment, they don't use it to buy a Cadillac or go on a cruise. They use it to buy food and to pay rent. So it's an investment into our economy to raise the unemployment. And certainly it depends on the cost of living, but we shouldn't be at the bottom of the barrel like Mississippi. Let's bring ourselves up at least average. Let's do that. So in the middle of the pack, so people in Arizona don't go hungry and don't go homeless.
All right. Representative Cook, where do you think that number should be?
The unemployment
Yeah.
number, I think it should be minimum wage. I think that's $480, I think, a week. That's something we need to look at. But you can't just say unemployment is this. And what I have not heard, because I have paid unemployment insurance, and I'm not sure anybody else on here, but if no one's mentioned it, insurance, it's unemployment insurance is paid by the business and the company. So it's whatever your rates are is when you have to pay those, it's paying into like an insurance pool. And so to keep those low for businesses and stuff, there has to be a fair balance. Number one is, as a business, do I get rid of this employee to where I'm on the hook for those unemployment benefits? So, or is it the employee chooses to leave, then they're not, they can't get unemployment if they quit their job, right? So let's say that we can talk about if I feel like that I don't want to go to work tomorrow and I quit my job, I'm not getting unemployment, sure. Right? But if the pandemic or something happens and I work for the fairs or the movie theaters or something like this, in which a government has shut down these businesses, then by all means, these people, they want to work. That's why I say we have got to get this state open. These people have plans. They are smart business people, and they can run their business in the guidelines that are set forth on them. And that's what we need to focus on. When I hear words about affecting our economy, we need to raise unemployment benefits to affect our economy. Well, we may need to raise unemployment benefits for the affected masses when a pandemic hits. But what is affecting our economy is not opening up our businesses and letting them get back to the work. And that's what I think one of our main focuses should be on, is getting people back out there, back to work in their businesses, in their churches, and let them live their lives.
All right. I think this goes to Miss McGuire. What do you think? Is a minimum wage about right? How much should our unemployment benefits be?
I think Representative Cook has a good point. Minimum wage would be a good starting point. Of course, you'd have to evaluate. You don't want to make it so high that it disincentivizes people from going back to work. But right. You need to make it to where it affords someone to not, as Sharon said, become homeless and to be able to feed themselves and their families. And, you know, I echo both what Sharon and David Cook, Representative Cook, have commented. But I also want to throw one other thing in there. You know, students also should be able to collect unemployment. Students work jobs as well. And when they lose their job, it's not because they wanted to. You know, they face a hardship. They're trying to go to school. And a lot of students have a job, and their employers allow them to work specific hours so that they can go to school. So when they do get laid off, I think we need to bridge that gap with them as well and allow them to collect that unemployment insurance along the way. You know, education is important. And when you stifle someone's education by denying them the basic living benefits in order to better themselves, I think it's a travesty. So I think minimum wage is a good starting point. But again, we would have to, I would rely on the folks at JLBC to give me the numbers and the data, and then I would bring all the stakeholders to the table, sit down and say, okay, here's what we, like David said, I'm a coordinator and an organizer. Here's what we have. What can we do with it, and how do we disperse it?
All right. So 3 out of 4 agree unemployment needs to be higher. How about you, Rep. Shope?
Most definitely. I think that being at that number at 240 is most definitely too low, as we have seen cost of living increase in especially the Phoenix metro area, which a portion of our district technically is in, Santan Valley, et cetera. And even cost of living in places like Casa Grande and Eloy and Coolidge have increased over, and it most definitely will now that we have employers like Lucid and Nikola moving in. That number does need to get looked at. On the flip side as well, I don't know what that number is. I'd have to agree with the other folks on the panel here. You elect us, folks, to go ahead and make these decisions after we have received all the information that is possible to be given to us. So I believe very strongly in that. That's the way I've worked the last 8 years, and will do so. And I think there's something that has to be said also. Look, you know, I'm one of the folks up here that has signed the front of a paycheck for folks and has had to be on those phone calls for unemployment insurance. These are things that do dramatically affect our small business folks that are out there and who have been hurt very, very harshly, and not by anything that was their fault, but by whether it was the virus itself, whether it was closures that the government imposed on these businesses. So we have to have a little sympathy for the folks that are going to have to end up paying more into that pool, as I believe Mr. Cook said. So there's a lot of things to peel back on that issue. But at the base, the question, the original question, yes, the number most definitely should be higher.
All right. So next question is about schools. I guess the simplest way to phrase this is, do you believe it's safe for students and teachers in your district to return to school right now? I'll add to that, if yes, what do you say to the teachers with health conditions that are scared about going back? And if not, what do you say to the parents who are struggling to juggle their jobs with now essentially becoming a teacher? And let's start with you again, Representative Shope.
Thank you. As many of you know, I've served on a school board for 12 years at Coolidge Unified. These are issues that the parents in my school district have to go through, the parents in my legislative district are going through right now. And it is something that is very difficult for them, very difficult decisions for our educators, and very difficult decisions for folks that serve on all volunteer boards, essentially, to decide how to best do this. I don't know that there's really a one size fits all. As we know what the metrics are that they show, we're going to continue. We've polled the students, for example, in my school district. You've got kind of a third out there. A third of parents want to send their kids we do a 4-day week, 4 days a week right now, just like it never happened. And then we have another section of parents that would be fine with a hybrid model of some sort, or maybe there was a proctor where online learning could take place at a site where folks were guaranteed to have broadband internet. And then there's another third or so that probably don't want to send their kid anywhere because they're scared. We have to find a way to make sure that we're taking care of all those students. I do have genuine concerns for especially parents who have students with special needs, because there are a lot of students out there that are not getting the treatment and the education in the way that they need to get it depending on whatever special need they have. So that is a major concern that we have to take a look at and have to keep top of mind, is how do we make sure that those parents and those students are taken care of. But overall, look, I do believe that we need to have our schools opened up. The fashion that they open up in should be left to those governing boards.
All right. Ms. McGuire, what do you think? Is it safe to reopen schools in LD8 right now?
I would say it depends on the school. It depends on the amount of virus in the area. It's been categorized by zip codes, but I think that we are reopening some schools too early. Look what's happened at ASU. What is it? 800 faculty and staff so far, and probably more than that by now, have come down with the COVID, with this virus. And now they're having to make living accommodations and separating them. And this is an example of reopening too soon. We have to meet the benchmarks and thresholds for reopening that were established by the Department of Health Services. They are the experts. They are the people that know how to keep us safe during this crisis, during this time of virus pandemic is going on. And, to send a kid to school, or a teacher, better yet, to school, who maybe has a pre-existing condition that if they get COVID, it's going to take their life, quite frankly. And I think the loss of just one life from this virus is one too many. And people with pre-existing conditions, they don't die from COVID. They die from the pre-existing conditions. No, I beg to differ. They have a pre-existing condition, and getting that virus on top of it, that is deadly combination for those folks, where if they don't get the virus, they're not exposed to it, they will live a much longer life. And I just think it's too risky. I think, you're setting up for failure if you don't meet these three benchmarks at least before reopening these schools. And yes, I get it. I sat here all this week with my grandson, helping him do online learning along with his mom, who, by the way, amazed me with her teaching skills. I think she missed her calling. But I know that a lot of people are having difficulty with this. And there are folks in the community that are, I don't know what other word to use, but co-opting parents to trade times and homes to let a few kids come in and help them all with their online learning at one time, so that it does give some relief and break to those that are struggling with this. But again, I think until we meet those benchmarks and thresholds for reopening, we're playing Russian roulette.
All right. Representative Cook, I think you're up.
Thank you, Hank. And I'm going to take this in a little bit different direction. I believe schools should be opened up according to the boards, yes. And the benchmarks have been met, but the kids need to get back in school. And what hasn't been talked about is I feel that we are in danger of losing critical funding for our district schools. It's like if you close down the motor vehicle department and you can work from home and do your license tag online and on the phone with somebody, then that job can be done from India or wherever. Well, the online learning that's going on with these small rural district schools from at home, well, if they can learn from home, then they can go online to other school opportunities. They can apply and go to charter schools, which are open. And the district schools I see could be in jeopardy of losing those students, which are critical to the funding and the long-term. If we're headed in the right direction to help and fix education in the state, 52% of our general funds budget goes to education in the state. We have put in $2.7 billion in new funding to education. And what I'm afraid of is the longer that these kids are out of school, because I talk to the principals, I talk to the school superintendents. Everyone tells me that I talk to, they want to get back in school with these kids. They have the protocol set in place. They have the janitorial staff. They have everything. I went to a high school graduation on the football field where social distancing and everything was done perfectly, in my opinion, while other high schools didn't even have graduation at all for these young people. And I think that if we don't get back to some sense of normalcy in a safe manner, what I'm being told is that we can do it. With still an online version for those parents that make that choice for them and them families, they make the choice, they want their child to stay home, they'll still have the learning availability at that district or school to do it online. But many parents want to get their children back in school with their classmates with face-to-face learning. And can you imagine being a first-time kindergartner kid going to kindergarten for the first time in the classroom and seeing this mask on your face? I mean, I'm worried about the long-term effects of what's going to have on children about what's going on today. I think we should be open. The district should make those decisions, especially when the benchmarks are being met.
All right. Ms. Girard, is it safe?
I have a real concern when people keep saying we have to get back to normal. There is nothing normal about what's happening now, and we have to adjust and work with it. This is an opportunity in education for innovation and creativity. And I am not as afraid of masks and what we're doing as I am afraid of disability and death. That's the number one thing. And like Barb McGuire said, and other people are saying, it is dependent on your area, district to district, whether the benchmarks are met. But one thing is for sure, when we decide to go back to school, we should do it with consultation with medical experts, people who have some knowledge of what's going on the ground before these decisions are made. We are in Arizona in dire straits and needs for teachers, yet teachers are quitting and retiring early because they don't want to teach and go back to school and sacrifice their health. And so we are just going to compound the problem. I get it. I worked full time the whole time my daughter was growing up, and I used school and after school programs. And I honestly, I understand and commiserate completely with the issues of the parents that are going through. But we have to take public health and safety first. So is it safe? It's safe. Maybe this one down the street and maybe not that one. But as you can see around the country and around the world, they open up and then they close. They have hundreds of cases and then they close. And no teacher signs up to put their life on the line when they go to school and get a bachelor's in education. They sign up to teach children, and we must do it safely. That's the bottom line.
All right. So I want to move on to initiatives a little bit, and this one ties in with education. And let's just stick with you, Ms. Girard. Do you support the Invest in Education initiative, which, for those who don't know, is to bring in between $800 and $900 million annually for schools by adding an extra surcharge, income tax surcharge, on those who earn more than $250,000 per year, or couples earning more than $500,000 per year?
I absolutely do. We need a dedicated revenue stream for education, and this support for this proposition has gone across party lines. It's not a Democrat, Republican, or nonpartisan. It is nonpartisan. Signatures were coming in from everywhere. And so, yes, I support it. We need help in funding education in Arizona, and this is going to be very helpful. It's not going to solve everything, but it's going to be very helpful. So, yes.
Rep Cook, you going to vote for it?
Absolutely not. Do not support it. I think it's discrimination. You're trying to tax a certain class of people. So what's to stop changing something to say, okay, anybody that makes over $60,000 a year, they need to pay more, or $50,000 a year, or $100,000. Where does this number come from? It was just streamed up. I said earlier, over 50% of our general fund budget, and I call that a steady revenue stream. Nothing is steady. You can't say that there is a steady revenue stream in anything when it comes to government. Just look at the economy. That is what sets a government's stream, is when the economy does well, then there's more there. When it doesn't do well, there's less there, and hard decisions have to be made. So when we look at the amount of money that I've talked about here that we have invested since I've been at the state legislature, it's just, I can't believe someone says there still needs to be more. Teachers got a 20% pay increase by 2020 that we delivered on with additional funding for education, and that's still not enough. While we've kept taxes low, you know, the 18-cent gas tax, that's because we needed it? Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not for it at all. And what's going to happen is you're going to have people. We've always said Arizona's open for business. Since I've been down there, I want to keep Arizona open for business. But people are moving here from California because it is a great place to live. It's a great economic environment. Taxes are decent and low, and there's good educational opportunities. I don't agree with the numbers that they say, but we have invested hundreds of millions of dollars, $2.7 billion more dollars in education. And I just don't see, no one has come to me and said, this is the bang for the buck, while we punish these people. And that's what you're really doing, is you're punishing them, saying, you're not paying enough. And I'm not for that, because when we divide people in classes, whether it's race or economic prosperity or whatever, then it's wrong across the board. And those conversations need to be broader.
And so, just to be clear, you're saying that we don't need any more money for our education system, that it's properly funded now?
Today, we have funded it at over 53% of the general fund budget of revenues that come in. And what we're just talking about now is we need to look at unemployment. We need to look at this pandemic. Education, we've addressed those things, and teachers in our district are making $54,000 a year at Casa Grande High School is the average teacher salary. That's pretty good when people are on unemployment, are $240 a week, that are struggling to feed themselves, pay their $500 utility bill, their electricity bill a month, or things like that. There are other things, and this is what I said earlier. We can work on all these things together, but if anybody thinks I'm going to go down, or if they say one person is going to go down there and do anything, they got another thing coming, because it takes a majority, 31, 17, and 1, to get anything done, and you need your colleagues on board. And I'll go back to education in my district, District 8, me and my seatmates, They are happy. I talk to them at least once a week. What can I do for you? What do you need? And as far as the teachers quitting their jobs, I think the percentage of teachers that quit their jobs over having to go back to the classroom is so small. It's got to be maybe 2%, 1%, if even that. Because I haven't heard of any teacher in District 8 quitting their job because they're going to go back to the classroom. And if there's one out there, dcook@azledge.gov, send me an email. I'll call you up and I'd love to discuss why you would be quitting your job to go back to the classroom to teach students.
I get some emails.
Thank you.
I guess it's to Miss McGuire. Are you going to vote for Invest in Ed?
Thank you for that lovely question. You know, we had close to 1,500 vacant teaching positions at the start of the year, and around 3,000 or 3,500 teaching positions are filled with people who don't meet standard teaching requirements. And you did have around 430 teachers abandon or resign from their positions prior to the 2019-2020 school year. And some of it, I won't say a lot of it, but some of it was based on the COVID situation. A lot of it was based on low pay. The average nationally for a teacher in information and data that I have read is $60,000 a year. You know, and our rural schools and those in lower socioeconomic levels are losing more teachers than those in the more affluent areas. Arizona is projected to have a $1.5 billion funding deficit over the next 3 years. We have to find a way to fund this. The best way so far, and it's going to be up to the voters. They're going to decide, and that's the way it should be. The voters should decide. With Invest in Ed Prop, it's going to raise $940 million yearly for Arizona Public Schools, and it can only be used to increase salaries for teachers, to reduce class sizes, to hire counselors and nurses. It's going to double the state money for career and technical education, you know, and it's somebody who makes $500,000 a year is going to cry about having to pay $35 a year to fund education, to bolster our economy. Education is an economic engine. We have to educate our kids. If we don't provide them the education that they need, corporations aren't going to hire them. They're going to outsource. They're going to pull from other countries in here. You know, some of them are already doing it now. I would hate to see Lucid Motors bringing in a bunch of folks from another state rather than hiring locally. You know, we have to have the funding, the dedicated funding source, and I think Prop 208 is going to bring that. We have suffered draconian public ed funding cuts from 2008 to 2014 and beyond. You know, this is only going to affect the top 1% of the wealthiest. No businesses are going to be taxed by this. Only those making $250,000 or single and $500,000 married are going to be impacted. You know, we are among the lowest in per pupil education spending in the nation. In the nation. Arizona can do better. We have to do better. Come on, people.
Shope, what are you going to do in November? You voting for this thing or against it?
Absolutely not. Will not be voting for it. I do believe it'll have a major impact on our ability to bring in a lot of these businesses that we were trying to bring in, as it will raise, for those top earners, especially, it'll raise us to a level that is in the top 7, I think, in the entire United States at the top bracket. But, you know, I don't really hold a lot of pity parties for folks that make $500K a year either. It will have an effect on some small business filers that do file at that individual level. I do have a concern for them, as they've been impacted by the pandemic harder than anybody else. And then I'll just give a little bit of a stat on you know what we've done in the last handful of years since I've been down there, since Representative Cook has joined us down there. We have really gone after education funding in a very positive way. I can tell you that at Coolidge Unified, where I sit on the board and have for 12 years, the average raise for a teacher for the 20 by 2020 plan was higher. It was 23.9%. Or excuse me, 29.1%. The average was or the lowest raise, excuse me, was 23.9%. The highest raise that we gave out was over 35% to a teacher. We were able to do that because we had a board that looked at what the legislature and the governor actually passed and said, how can we make this work in order to get the money to its intended place, which was our educators. We can do it. I've shown you just one example there that I'm very passionate about, what we did locally in my own school district, and frankly, should have been done at every governing board level across the state. There's 230 school districts in the state. All should have been able to come up with plans like that if they would have done what we actually intended for those monies to go. So no, I will not be supporting this effort. I do not think it's necessary, and I do think it could inhibit growth in the future.
Okay, same follow-up as for Mr. Cook.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, jump in there.
Can I say something real quick? I just want to correct something. I thought I heard TJ say it's going to affect 7%. That's incorrect. The data shows that it's only going to affect the top 1% of the wealthiest, and it will not affect the small mom and pop businesses. Small businesses will not be affected. I don't know any small businesses that have a profit margin of $500,000, and if they do, $35 isn't going to break them. It's a worthwhile investment to invest in education.
Hank, to me, the numbers don't work here. It's going to raise $800 million a year, but it's only $35 per $250,000 person, a single or $500,000 earning person, married couple, at $35 a year.
No, it starts
$100 million. The numbers don't work.
No, because you're
Let
not.
me explain this surcharge quickly.
Yeah, he doesn't
So
understand.
It only taxes you on the income above the $250,000. The taxing rate right now is about 4.5% for people at that income bracket, and will jump to 8%, but only on the money earned above the 250 or the 500.
Right. So would you move to Arizona?
Correct.
You move to Arizona if you had the ability to move your company. Now, this is where I think the difference is of affecting businesses. Would you move your company to Arizona and a higher tax bracket? This is why people are fleeing California. They're fleeing New York, is because we have a system that works here. And that the fact that we can say that it's not going to affect small businesses, it may not affect the business bottom line on their taxes, but the people that have the resources to invest in the future of Arizona and move here and have their chance of being the American dream here in Arizona will choose somewhere else. That's why these places that have tried this stuff are failing and are being left behind. And that's why we have people moving to Arizona, because we do things rationally.
Do you really believe that someone that makes combined $500,000 a year would not want to help the educational system in Arizona? And if it is a business, what we are doing is educating the new employees for the future. This is an investment in our state, and that is one of the problems that we're having. How can we bring in new businesses when we say we don't have the educated workforce, whether it's technical education or college, because our educational system is so poor, and we do not, like Barb McGuire said, we have so many teachers that are not certified and that are teaching. We have empty classrooms without good teachers, and these teachers go out and they get master's degrees and they get education, and after a couple of years they say, I can make more money working in California or working online somewhere. Forget it, I'm not going to teach in Arizona. It's an investment in our state, and it's an investment when companies come in and say, what kind of educated workforce do you have? How many millionaires are you worried? And like they said, it doesn't start until the couple makes over $500,000 a year, and then it's a gradual tax. there is an amazing amount of fear out there that these people don't want to pay their fair shares. Yet most corporations, when they say, if we'll tax you more, it'll go towards education and educating the workforce, usually say, okay. And we're not asking corporations, and we're not asking small businesses. We're asking individuals who come here for a better lifestyle. I think you underestimate people. I really do.
Hank, I'd like to respond to that.
Get in there.
Okay, so what you're saying is we have a horrible education system here in Arizona. That's all I've heard here tonight, which I completely disagree about. That's the reason why Microsoft is coming to Arizona in I believe 3 plants in the West Valley. That's the reason why we've got the factories and stuff for the Nikola and these other places moving to Pinal County, is because we have built an education system on innovation and teaching these kids, and through STEM projects and things, the successes that we are at today is why these companies are now moving here. If it was so horrible, if the education system was so horrible and we didn't have a trained workforce, they wouldn't be coming here. So it just doesn't make sense to someone that's, like me, that says, okay, we've invested for years. We're spending billions of dollars years ago building up to what we have today. Now these companies are coming here because we have a trained workforce. We have great universities. We have great community colleges. We have great high schools, middle schools. We have a great education system, and people are having the opportunities when these companies come to have careers and not just jobs. And I completely disagree with you, Sharon, about our education system here in Arizona. I think it's one of the best around not just the country, but around the world.
Can I reply? Please don't get me wrong. I think that we have, in many ways, a very wonderful educational system, but we also have our share of DNF schools and students and schools struggling. 23% in our district, the children live in poverty. That is not okay. And wait. And a lot of the businesses that are coming in are not coming in solely because of our educated workforce, though we do have a wonderful partnership with Central Arizona College and other organizations training the workforce. I understand that. But we also need to look at the other incentives that we give these businesses to move here. They are not moving 100% because of how well our education system is. When we admit we have a long way to go, and we admit that we have issues that we have to do better for students in some schools, that's when we are going to do better. And that's what I would like to do, make things better and level the playing field for all children in all districts, in all schools.
So,
very quickly, Representative.
Okay, so the problems I heard, Sharon, what you just said was there are people living in poverty in these districts. How does that proposition address people living in poverty? I don't understand how voting to tax someone else and what the money is going for is teacher raises, counselors. I mean, that is putting the money into a system that no one in the district has called me up from an education, from the school district, and said, we don't have enough money for X, Y, and Z of what this proposition says the money is going for. Now, what I believe we could find common ground on is getting a bipartisan team together and addressing and looking at the minimum wage. Because if not, you know what's going to, I mean, not the minimum wage, but the unemployment. Because if not, what have we seen in the past about minimum wage? The voters are going to do it, right? Marijuana, the voters are going to do it if the legislature doesn't do anything. So I'm all for addressing these problems head on. But remember, one person isn't going to do it. You have to have a bipartisan effort to do that, and it can be done. And that's why education is where it's at today, is because we have been working on it for 4 years, and we've invested, like I said, $2.7 billion more in it.
I don't know how much more you want to continue this.
We can do one more quick round. If you've got a response.
All I want to say is no, this will not solve poverty, but these children are at higher risk and need more support. And I don't know who you've talked to, but I've sat down with teachers, superintendents, and principals, and they have a long list of needs, and all their needs are not being met. So I just want to do what's best for the systems and get their needs met as much as possible.
Okay. And Representative Cook mentioned marijuana. That's up next. Representative Shope, are you going to vote for the Smart and Safe Arizona Act, which would legalize recreational marijuana adults 21 and over?
I'm not opposed to recreational marijuana for people 21 and over. I'm opposed to this proposition because I do believe it's poorly written. I believe your guys' publication, the Capital Times, had me quoted, had interviewed me about efforts that I was trying to do in the legislature to pass something as far as marijuana goes. What folks at home don't understand oftentimes is that these propositions go up and they can't be changed anytime down the road. So for example, if this proposition is passed and the federal government at some point comes to its wisdom and does a similar legalization or for recreational, there's going to be major problems to be had because they will tax it. And the way that this proposition is written, the Arizona tax on it would have to be reduced. So that way the person who is purchasing marijuana pays the same tax rate no matter what. So we are actually asking the voters to pass something that could see diminishing returns if and when, and I think we all know that it's when the federal government also legalizes recreational marijuana. We have to be very careful here. Like I said, I'm not opposed to the legalization of recreational. It's why I worked on it last year. I couldn't get obviously a majority in the Republican caucus. I couldn't get a single Democrat to come on because folks were all in on this specific proposition. So we have to look very hard at the language of these things because you can be in a situation like mine, and I'm sure there are others who think that this is probably the right time and the right thing to do, but not this way.
All right. And just to be clear, initiatives can be changed. It just takes a supermajority vote in both the House and the Senate, and that change has to be in front of the intent of the initiatives.
Which has never happened.
It happens.
It has not happened. It's not happened in both chambers since then.
Ms. McGuire, what are you going to do in November about the weed issue?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Are you going to vote for the Smart and Safe Arizona Act, which would legalize recreational marijuana for adults?
Yes, the majority of the voters have spoken. They want this. And TJ mentioned something about returns, diminishing returns. I don't understand. How would returns you are not now receiving be diminished? Any return you get is more than what you have now. We tax beer, we tax tobacco, we tax other substances that are sold over the counter. And I think this would just be one more tool in the toolbox when it comes to revenue for infrastructure, education, healthcare, you name it. You know, if the general public are for it and they want to pay the taxes, yeah, by all means.
All right. Representative Cook, how are you going to vote?
Hey, Hank, I'm going to vote no, and that's okay. I heard that the voters are overwhelmingly going to support it. That could be the case. They didn't support it a few years back when it was on the ballot. However, they came back and I'll go back to minimum wage. When the legislature doesn't act and they get propositions on the ballot like minimum wage, it's out of their hands. I believe we should have tackled marijuana, legalizing marijuana at some fashion during the legislative session. Now, COVID would have hit, it would have derailed it already. But there is a plan to put in place, but there's questions that are unanswered. So if we're going to legalize the use of marijuana for 21 and over, then I want to know about the stuff that I really care about too, is some criminal justice reform policy that we need to be moving forward at the same time. It goes back. We just don't have to focus on one thing. We can focus on a lot of things. So if we decriminalize the use of marijuana, what happens to the people that are convicted for the possession of marijuana at whatever quantity that may be, right? And so I think that's some of the conversations. If I had my rathers, and if it fails at the ballot, then what I would like to see is get a bipartisan coalition and do an ad hoc committee and really get some people focused on working on the solution. Now, when I read about it, where some of the money's going to go, well, if it's going to go to HERF funding, I mean, that's something, because I'm a big infrastructure person for rural Arizona and building that up without having to raise the gas taxes 18 cents a gallon. So my vote will be no for the proposition. It's going to be left up to the people. And if it passes, we'll deal with it. When we look at other what I call red states and conservative states like Oklahoma, when it's put to the voters, it's passed. But what you heard TJ mention too is, if the federal government passes something that legalizes it, what happens if they come back and say marijuana is illegal, and then they turn around and were these states that's done it? Another thing is, we should probably send some people up to Colorado to sit down and find out what social problems have arose from the legalization in that state in Colorado, because remember, the neighboring states sued them when they legalized marijuana because people were driving to that state, buying it and bringing it back to where it was illegal. So I think the larger question for me is, I need more information. I think the legislature needs to do its job. That's why I signed the thing to get back in session today. But we can focus on these problems and work them out in the daylight. But I think it's probably going to pass. I want to agree with what TJ and everybody else said on here, is that I think the voters are tired of not getting something done on the legalization of marijuana at this time and age where we're at. And I think it's got a good chance of passing, but I'm not going to vote for it.
How about you, Ms. Girard?
Yes, I'm going to vote for it. I think it's time. And I'm not as optimistic as TJ and David about Schedule 1 changes for marijuana. It's been that way a very long time, and things move slowly in Washington, D.C. I don't know if there's an appetite for moving that off the schedule. It would be great, and it should never have been there anyways in the first place. No one has ever overdosed over a new thing. So yes, with definitely a caveat over the age of 21 and such. But yes, I am for that for sure.
Well, we have already crossed the 1 hour mark, but I'm going to push it a little bit. I've got 2 more questions that I really want to get to. So the first is, do you support increasing the gas tax? Which I think I know where Mr. Cook lands on this, but the rest of you haven't chimed in yet. So let's start with you, Ms. Girard. The gas tax, for those who don't know, is largely used to fund road maintenance, construction, infrastructure projects. It hasn't been raised in over 30 years. Ms. Girard, do you support raising it? And if so, how much do we need to bring in from it?
We need to bring in as much money as we can, and I definitely do believe that it's time. It's been a very long time, since the 90s, that we have had the gas tax. There's cost of living and inflation, and it hasn't gone along with it. But to be fair, as a electric car driver, I think that there needs to be something for us as well. So we pay our fair share. We need to put that into it as well, because we are using the roads too. And everyone uses the roads, and that we need to work on infrastructure. Our roads are in terrible shape in many places, especially in rural areas, and we need the revenue generated. So yes, I am for increasing the gas tax.
Mr. Cook?
Yeah, Hank, absolutely not at this time and place, because what I've learned since I went down there with my colleagues and my seatmates and stuff that we've done is that what was happening is that you can have someone say that, well, we're $1 billion in a deficit. They like to throw those out. We're $1 billion in a deficit for our road infrastructure. Well, when you roll up your sleeves and you start reading the bills and the language and stuff like that, what you find is, $117 to $126 million a year was being taken out of our road money and being used for other purposes. So before we can even look at raising any taxes, for any specific thing, I think we have to put the money back what its original intent was for. So we have done that over the last 2.5 years. We have now gotten those things down to where it's supposed to be. Those monies and those dollars, those PERF dollars, cities and towns in our district and District 8 are seeing a vast increase of their PERF funding. And in fact, I ran the bill along with my seatmates' help. We got it delivered in the budget that we paid back every city and town in District 8 what had been taken back, what they had taken from them over the past 10 years of their road money. So the excuse isn't money there. It's always money, money, money. The excuse isn't money anymore, right? Because you've gotten paid back in one check of what you had taken over the past 10 years, which could only be done what I call brick and mortar. Couldn't be given for raises, couldn't buy equipment, had to be done on the infrastructure. That's when you go to downtown places like Superior or Globe or these places where you see their downtown's been redone and resprayed and asphalt and stuff. That's because they are now getting the funds that were being taken from them returned to them. So what is the need today if we return over 120 some million dollars back to what those roads are before? Then we start chipping away at what the so-called deficit is. And then we have to look at, Hank, when we talk about raising a statewide gas tax, many counties haven't done their initial gas tax, which would stay inside that county. The Board of Supervisors. So, I think me and my seatmate, or I can't speak for him, got hit the other day about voting for a gas tax. No, I voted for the ability for Pima and Maricopa counties to put it to the voters to see if those voters in those counties wanted to pay an additional gas tax without raising the taxes. It's just like what Pinal County's done, and they're building that fund up now, which will go for the north-south corridor and for more infrastructure. Those dollars stay local then. I am not for putting a statewide gas tax and because I'll just see it being used somewhere else.
Okay. Ms. McGuire, is it time to raise the gas tax?
No, I don't support that. That's going to hurt our trucking industry. I just don't support that. Why don't we look at rolling back corporate tax breaks, some of the corporate tax breaks a little bit, and closing loopholes to get infrastructure funding, rather than taxing, folks that use the road every day that are already paying large amounts. And what happened to the auto tax tag increase, which, by the way, hurt ranchers, farmers, and a lot of others who couldn't afford that tax increase. We were told it was going to be $16 or $8. It ended up being $32. Somebody that's living on a fixed income, a single widow, and barely getting by, now she can't pay for her car tags, let alone pay for the insurance to drive it. That hurt a lot of people. So I say let's look at rolling back a slight amount of the corporate tax break and closing some loopholes that we can find to get infrastructure funding, not increase gas tax for that.
Hey, some bipartisan agreement.
Amen.
Representative Shope?
Yeah, no way. And one of the things that I talk about a lot, I speak at a lot of different events and to different groups of folks. We should not be even looking at considering anything with the gas tax. As vehicles have gotten more fuel efficient, I think it's one of those things that we have to look at and say, it's never going to pay for itself. It's never going to be enough. And furthermore, folks move to places like Santan Valley. They move to places like Casa Grande, and many of them do so because they want to live not in the city that they work in, not in the metro area, but they want to live a little further out where they can still see stars at night, where they can still hear a coyote howl every once in a while out in the wild. And those folks are on the roads every single day. So we're going to punish them. Heck, we can't even expand I-10, or it's taken a long time, and that's what I'm going to be working on next year. But my goodness, no way should we be doing that. We should be looking at EVs. We should be looking at other vehicles because, look, I want the market to go entirely in that direction. However, we're not there yet, but we still ought to be having folks who are using the road paying their share, and I think that's one part. I think you mentioned bipartisan there. There we go. Sharon brought that up earlier as well. So look, that's something we have to look at with the gas tax. we should that should be in the dustbin of history as far as talking about increasing it.
Right. And so one more before we get to closing statements, something near and dear to the heart of journalists everywhere. Does the legislature need ethics reform? And if so, what do you propose? Let's start with you, Mr. Shope.
Well, look, for the last 2 years, I've served as the Ethics Committee Chairman in the House, led an investigation of a member. I want to say something really clear. Nobody on this screen is running for office. Nobody anywhere, I would imagine, in the state of Arizona that's running for office is doing so to investigate a colleague. I think that that's something that is probably on the last of people's minds. That being said, we have rules. Rules are to be followed, and I, in the position I held, it was what we were supposed to do. And I don't know that there's really any need for reform. We have to actually make sure that what we have on the books is actually adhered to. That's what the committee is for. I've heard a lot of different things. I've looked at 50 different states' ethics rules, and boy, you want to talk about some fun nighttime reading. But thankfully groups like National Council State Legislators do a lot of the homework and give us the stuff from the other states. There's any number of ways that you can tackle it. And if you look at state by state, there's any number of ways that they have tackled it. But look, we just need folks to do what they're supposed to do. And when folks slip up, there's a committee that's already charged in both houses to look into it, to make sure that any of the investigative members are taken into account. The system works. If it didn't work, then we wouldn't have had, I think, Mr. Stringer, others over the last several, Mr. Patterson 10, 15 years ago, people like that. The system works. Otherwise, those folks would still be around.
Ms. McGuire, do you think the system works?
To a degree. It depends on, and I'm sure it would be the same way if either party were in control. I think it needs to be an ethics committee that is an outsourced independent committee that is not in and of the legislature, that folks that are called to the carpet on would have to go before. I think that they should be able to do the investigation. They should come up with recommendations and not force colleagues to have to go against one another in that type of a situation. It's not healthy. It doesn't benefit anyone. And if you take it out of the hands of the legislature and elect a board to do that job, I think we would all be better off if we outsource it.
All right. Representative Cook.
What's the question?
Does the state need ethics reform for our lawmakers?
There's always room for improvement. And so what I would say is that I would like to volunteer whoever wins the majorities in both the House and the Senate. I think these things need to be looked at, and they need to be, the rules need to be voted on by the members. And so what I've learned is that if you have a due process and you're allowed a due process system, then it's fair and bipartisan and all that. But if you use something to weaponize it or punish people, then that's something differently. When it gets political, then that's where it gets off the track. If it's used in a common sense matter and it's not used as a weapon, then it's probably okay, but there's always room for improvement, and I'm willing to help whoever.
To move, Kirk. You need to move, Kirk. I'm sorry.
And I think that's to you, Ms. Girard.
I guess that's me. Hi.
Do we need ethics reform at the Capitol?
Yes. Well, I think it's a complicated issue. And one of the things we are as legislators or elected officials are role models. We are role models to people in the state. And I think just as teachers are role models to students, and I was a role model when I practiced medicine to my patients, not, if I was caught smoking and I told someone not to smoke and they found I was smoking, I would never tell somebody to do something I didn't do myself. So I think we should be held to a standard, maybe not the highest standard because people do fall and fail, but to a strong, high standard. And there are ethics boards everywhere. As a physician assistant, I know there's an ethic boards for my profession, and someone can be brought up against that, whether it's a doctor or whatever, and say you are violating ethics. So perhaps it needs to be an unbiased board to take a look at it, but we don't need distractions in the legislature. We need people to go in there, do their job, and live a lifestyle free of distractions. And yes, I think in some ways we need to look at the ethics. And now I'm not elected, so I don't know the entire process, but it needs to be a process that works well, and that we are role models, and we should be held to a slightly higher standard than someone who's not elected. And I know when I'm elected, I will see myself as a role model and will work to be a high standard as I live my life.
All right. So we've spent an hour and 20 minutes here together. I appreciate you all taking the time to answer these questions for the voters, but we're getting to closing comments. Let's start with you, Mr. Representative Shope.
Well, once again, thanks for having me on tonight. I hope that we were able to give you, the voters, an opportunity to see who your options are. And I think for me, one of the keys here has been, let's look at where we are today in 2020 in Legislative District 8. As I mentioned early on, we have we've had some great successes. We've had some challenges come our way. I am enthused about the way we have reacted to many of those challenges. I look forward to serving you at the state Senate, just as I have served you in the state House for the last 8 years. And we need to go ahead sometimes and say, yes, we're doing great things. Lucid Motors, 2,000 jobs. Nikola Motors, 2,000 jobs coming to LD8. Also, today signed an agreement with General Motors to produce their truck that their technology is going to go into. Folks, we are on the cusp of greatness in Legislative District 8. I am so proud to have been born, raised, and live here in LD8. I want to continue to serve this district, and I want to continue to make positive things happen in people's lives on a daily basis within our district. And with your help, you can really put us over the top in this state Senate race. As I mentioned, just been an honor to serve. I look forward to continuing to do so. And I look forward to being that guy that you can always reach out to on any issue, even if we don't agree. So that way we can come to some sort of consensus potentially on issues. So thank you. Look forward to earning your vote.
All right. Thanks, Representative Shope. Ms. McGuire, your closing statements.
Yes, thank you, Hank. We cannot allow the state budget to continually be balanced on the backs of working families. Our future and our children's future depend on it. The residents and communities of District 8 deserve a state senator who will put the needs of our district ahead of partisan interests and will fight every day for education, jobs, economic development, quality of life, equal rights, and public safety. We deserve a senator that understands there is no better investment we can make in our state than to properly fund Arizona public schools. We need a state senator who knows how to reach across the aisle and get things done. I am that senator. No party has a monopoly on good ideas. I'm proud to buck my party every now and then. Parties don't elect us, people do. I ask for your vote so I can get back to work, get back to fighting for you and your families. I've always had an open door policy at the Capitol, and I will continue to do so once you send me back to the Arizona State Senate. May God bless you, our district, and this great nation.
All right. Thank you, Ms. McGuire. Representative Cook, your turn. Closing statements.
Yeah, great, Hank. Thanks for everybody that is watching tonight or might watch us in the future, and thanks for everybody taking the time to get on here. What I want to do is return and finish the work that is still left undone. What my main focus is that when people in District 8 for 17 years was paying a tax and not receiving 1 penny back, that was one of the first things that I reached out to my seatmates and other colleagues throughout the state, and we solved those problems. And for the first time now, we can say that all high schools in District 8 now have dual enrollment. So these children are now getting on the pipeline for a higher education, whether it's at a community college or major university in this state or another state. those educational opportunities, we've grown that for high school students to where there's up to 55, 52 credits now available in some of these high schools, along with the partnerships we've done with like Arizona State University and Northern Pioneer College. So the opportunity these kids have today is far exceeds what they had 4 years ago in this district. When we talk about infrastructure, which is one of my best things I love to work on, like the Tonto Basin Bridge, the North-South Corridor, TJ, he takes the lead on I-10, and I give him whatever assistance I can, because you have a team, you've got people that have rolled up their sleeves since I've been there for 4 years that have solved huge problems for District 8. And I'm asking the voters, you have 2 votes for the State House. I'm asking for one of those votes. And I appreciate it. And I will continue to work hard. And no one is going to fight more for the people of this district than me. I'll make sure of that. I promise, just like I have.
Thank you, Representative Cook.
You're welcome.
Girard, your closing comments. Ms. Girard, you are muted.
I'm not, sorry.
Technology.
Thank you very much for having us here tonight for this lively conversation. I am a fighter. I have fought for my patients, and I will fight for you. I will fight for your families, and I will fight for your children, because they will be the utmost importance to me. I have the knowledge and experience needed to move our great district forward towards the successes for the bright future that I believe we can have. But we must do better, whether it's education, healthcare, jobs for the future. I'm an optimist. I've always been optimistic, and that's why I'm running for office, because I know we can do better, and I want to help you have the best life possible. I look forward to putting words into action and improve healthcare, education, funding, and job opportunities for everyone when I am elected to serve the people of my district as your next state representative. I am asking for your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Girard. All right, that concludes our debates. To the candidates, we thank you so much for participating. To the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch online and inform yourselves before the November election. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is your source for nonpartisan voter information. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for all your voting needs. That's it for me. Thanks so much, candidates. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hank. Great job.